Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My guest today is Sean O'Sullivan, an Irishman who I'm looking forward to getting to know. It's our first time having a conversation. Thank you, Sean, for reaching out to me and being willing to join me in the podcast. So,
delighted to be here and great to get the invite, Ed, and pleased to meet you. I saw an interview you did of a great friend of mine in Australia and a mentor of mine. I mean, I could list multiple nouns what the man means to me, David Ross.
Oh yeah.
And there is nothing David has ever done that I haven't enjoyed. But I probably enjoyed your interview of him more than anything, because there was such an obvious camaraderie and kindred spirits energy going on. Oh, yeah. And I said, well, hey, if Ed's David's type of guy, he's my type of guy too. So it's good to get a chance to meet you.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that was such a great conversation. We had to do it in two parts, and I look forward to.
So I saw, and I have a long record of scheduling reasonably short meetings with David myself, and never ending them when they should end. So
yeah, well, I could do that too. I had a call the other night with an old friend that went 5.5 hours. So
wow, okay,
it didn't seem like that at all. It was just,
I know what you're saying. That's so heavy.
Seamless and enjoyable. So yeah, conversation.
Well, it's really interesting. I'm going to name check a very dear and beloved friend of mine who passed away only maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to think of the exact timing. J. Brian Hennessy, and he was also a great friend of David's. And the reason I bring him into this conversation right now is exactly what you said about that 5.5 hour conversation not feeling like anything. Brian was really passionate about, I guess, the evidence of synergy between people. And he said when you're doing the right thing or with the right people, an hour seems like, you compress time, and you could he used ask at the end of a meeting, how long did that feel? And he would use the ratio, for want of a better word, of the actual elapsed time versus the perceived elapsed time as being a direct metric of flow. And it was and remains illuminating, because he's dead right. You can have a 2 hour conversation that feels like 40 minutes, and that's because you're talking to the right people.
Well, it's I'm looking for the right book here. This factors into what Henry Bergson writes about in Time and Free Will.
Okay.
And he sees that.
Not familiar. Interesting.
He was. I mean, what I found out about him is he was probably the world's foremost philosopher during the first half of the 20th century, and then all of a sudden he just kind of disappeared from people's thing. But he saw time in two different forms. There's the time that we measure with our clocks, and then there's another time that we measure by, and I'm just going to use my language, by what we remember. And it's not really sequential or linear time. It's time as captured in the moment, and yes, and that I think that's what we're talking about.
That's the exact same thing. It's remarkable that you have a book within reach on that exact topic.
But, well, I've been reading this this week, and so because time is one of those big questions that we face, because it traps us into thinking that we must hurry to finish something. And I'm thinking of Johnny Moore's book Unhurried, and as I say that, but that sense of being relaxed in the moment of time where you can spend 5.5 hours having a conversation with a dear friend, and realize that this is not the passage of time. This is just time as a kind of an existential reality.
Yeah, this is just time. I love it.
So So I'm not focused on the clock here as we talk. We'll go as long as we want to, like I did,
Good.
like I did with David. And
Indeed.
so,
Well, I don't. Yeah, I'm 100% yours for as long as it feels right.
and as long as the internet holds out, right?
As long as my broadband lives, exactly. I was explaining before you started recording that I'm in the edge of rural Ireland, and I'm in my family home place in West Cork. And I've come down here. I live in Cork City, which is maybe 2 hours drive from here, and I just come down for some kind of quiet time, focused time. My parents are dead. My siblings, nobody lives here. So I come down here with my brother and sister-in-law very kindly make the house available to any and all of us, which is a wonderful luxury to have, to be able to come back to your own home place. And when I want to get a volume of quality work done, it's a wonderful place to do it from. But recently the broadband has been a little bit temperamental, which one should really not complain about, because the fact it works at all is is quite impressive. Yeah, the continuity of this call is something to be hoped for,
Yeah,
but not guaranteed.
I'm not worried about it. That's why
Good,
we have
good. Well, if you're not worried, I'm not worried.
that's why we have editing tools. And
Indeed.
so it'll be great.
So
Tell us who you are actually, and what is it that you do, and because I don't really know anything.
And thank you for the question, Ed. Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a little bit chronologically. I'm a farmer's son. In fact, I shouldn't even say a farmer's son. It's real subsistence. It's a hill farm. So I grew up on a farm, but my father made money from a variety of activities. Pure farming wouldn't have made the grade even back then. Grew up on a farm, but it's a hill farm, quite rural, and definitely I think it's not what most people would think of when you say the word farm. And I'm not sure who your audience or the demographics or distribution. But it was quite a rural background, and quite a I guess sheltered background, and it was a really beautiful one. I mean, I'm very grateful for where I grew up and how I grew up. I grew up part of a big Irish family, and in a very sheltered environment, and just loved it. Loved the whole activity of farming, the physical nature of that. And one thing I can share about you is, with no specific plan or location, or at least certainly no specific ability to do so yet. In my future, farming features again. I want to go regenerative farming when I've done what I'm currently doing. Just to take it chronologically quickly, studied electronic engineering, worked in IT, formed a business doing bespoke software and custom software, formed a software product business, and did various stints around business and technology over, I guess, the first 20 or 25 years of my career, which brought me to 2015. I was 45. I was recently separated, on the road to becoming divorced, which has happened since. And looking at what I wanted to do with, let's say, I'm not sure should I call it the second half of my career, but whatever came next. And I had done some interesting stuff, but I wanted to do stuff that was both interesting and financially rewarding and meaningful to me. And I was looking for that kind of nexus, that overlap. So I hit on a plan, which was, I was living in a beautiful part of Ireland, just outside Cork, called Kinsale, in a lovely apartment. And I used to bring people to live with me from effectively all walks of life and all locations, all continents, one or two or three at a time. to educate myself about the state of the world and the kinds of things one might do if one were to be useful. And of course, the list of things that one might do if one wanted to be useful grew longer and longer, and it became less clear how you could actually usefully dive in. Because one of the things that was patently clear to me was that very most activities that we associate with doing good in the world are of the band-aid variety. They're fixing symptoms. They're not tackling root causes, and that just didn't feel useful to me. And I found it somewhat frustrating. I really want to be useful, folks, but I'm not seeing too many useful things that I can lean into. So over time, the other thing that I suppose in that 2 or 3 year period developed for me is just an appreciation of how grave the challenges facing the world are. And I'm by no means a pessimist or a fatalist or anything else, probably quite the opposite. I think there's great hope for humanity if and when we learn to collaborate properly and work together based on well-informed premises instead of misinformation and so on. So initially, I thought, if you're familiar with the For Dummies book series, software for dummies and so on, I was going to do a kind of a riff on that theme for empowered people. So climate change for empowered people, equality for empowered people, etc. And that seemed useful for a while, but as one wonderful guy from Honduras said to me, he said, it's not an information problem. People know what to do. It's a participation and a collaboration problem. And I guess I looked at myself and looked around me and thought, guess what? The guy's right. It's not just facts. People don't just need facts. They need a surface they can lean into to make change through. In parallel with this, and this is post 2016, and I was looking at the US election, I was looking at Brexit, I was looking at information and misinformation online. I'm a techie, that's my background. And I just didn't like how tech was being used, and I guess how our data is used, and how we have somehow become the product, basically, that's being sold to everybody else.
Right.
So all of these things came together, and I said, what the heck? I'm going to build a platform that is designed to get in underneath all of the conversations and collaborations and organizations and people working to move things forward, and connect them better than they're currently connected, and connect them in better information, connect them in a for-purpose platform, and connect them in community, so that if they're making change in wherever it might be, Ohio or Cork or Sydney or wherever it might be, that you connect them in place, but you connect them to across places, you connect them across topics, and you create a cloud of communities, place-based or topic-based, for people to collaborate and get stuff done. So that is what we have been building. It's a technological, but it's I tend to steer away from the platform language, just because it's got a particular expression we're used to seeing, the X's or the Twitters or the Facebooks or the LinkedIn's. We're used to seeing things in a given way. What we're building is more of an infrastructure, something that connects people more so than, we don't drive everybody into the one place. We connect them where they are. We wrap it's like a huge cloud of Lego pieces, and we customize and configure things for organizations, for communities, for projects, and we connect them into a unified whole. So you've kind of got a purpose-specific community that connects into an interconnected whole. That's what we're building.
That I can't tell you how excited I am to hear what you're describing, because what I have been what I identified 20 plus years ago was how difficult it was for companies to function, period, because they did not have a good understanding of relationships, and they didn't have a good understanding of the values that undergird relationships, and as a result, they didn't understand how the structure of networks, of human networks, I call them networks of relationships, and that people are learning about that, and they and in the effect of the expansion of these networks of relationships is a decentralizing of organizational structures around the globe. So what I hear you saying is that you are providing an IT structure for the sustainability of human networks, so that they can maintain connection and maintain collaboration. They can work together. They can meet people. I mean, the whole premise behind the Eddie Network podcast is built around the idea of networks. I want to meet people, and I want to connect with people, and I want them to connect me with other people, so that we can have this exchange going on. So am I hearing correctly that this is what you're trying to do?
You're not just hearing correctly, Ed. You are I love it when this happens. You were describing it better than I could. Okay,
wow.
And because you know the underlying reasons, and it's quite interesting from my perspective. I have two sets of experiences. I meet people who I don't need to explain it to, and I meet people who I couldn't explain it to. if you understand the point I'm making, because when you understand the need, it's fabulous. It's great. That makes sense. That is useful. That will serve. That is valuable. And when you haven't, for whatever reason, being exposed to the possibilities and so on, then it's a longer journey to say, well, hey, imagine if you could break this into, smaller groups and smaller issues while remaining connected. So exactly as you said, it's also really, I picked up on the fact that you honed in on the corporate side of that straight away. And I want to say two things about that. One is, you are so right. The potential to empower companies, both as a collective whole, but then individuals and teams within companies, to at a corporate level, to be more useful in society, and at the team or individual level, to play more fully within the company, to bring more of themselves. They're not just cogs. They're not just units. They're fully formed. They're as smart when they're working as they are when they're not working. So why are we not tapping into that? And I extremely strongly believe that both the complexity of the world we're living in and the speed with which we're changing means everybody's got to be driving with the handbrake down, because the good old-fashioned "here's the manual, do it this way" doesn't cut muster anymore.
Right.
Things are moving too fast, and you've
Right.
got to be able to tap into everything that people can bring and everything that people can do.
What I saw happening, I saw this over a long period of time, and I didn't have language for it until just a few years ago, was the kind of the traditional view of a corporate structure is a pyramid, and
Sure.
you have your executive level, and you have your middle manager level, and you have the worker level. That's an oversimplification. I realize that. But the further I got into, I'm an outsider in that world. I'm not a corporate person. Because of my father's constant complaints at the dinner table about his boss, I knew I didn't want to go into that, and I didn't know what I was going to go. So what I have come to see is that the strength of an organization is in the relationships of the people. And so I got this phrase, and It says there is a persistent residual culture of values that persists because it resides in the relationships of the people. And the question is, how does
very
that
powerful
happen?
framing?
And it doesn't happen programmatically. It happens because there is relationships and community, and there's shared values that are taking place, which cause people to want to work together. And then those people who don't want to fit into that, they don't fit into that, and they get ostracized. And so, you know, it can be both healthy and unhealthy, but this is what I see happening in organizations. So I see what you're doing is a tool for how a management team could create a network structure within the traditional corporate structure.
Absolutely. I love it. One of the I'm going to mention them very briefly again, Brian Hennessy. It's the way you speak about the corporate structure and the interplays within that. It's like meeting my old friend again. It's actually lovely.
I wish I had known him, so I didn't. So I
precisely. Yeah. Well, you're doing a heck of a job of channeling him anyway. So
wow.
No,
I'm honored. I'm honored because I saw a lot of comments about his passing. And
oh, good. So that's nice. That's nice. Yeah.
So I know a little bit about who he is.
Excellent.
No, I know that he's deeply and significantly respected by lots of people that I
100% and very warmly so. Absolutely.
That's great. So how is
the
it
other point I was going to make on the corporate?
So what I was going to ask is, so this I mean, we talked earlier about you're kind of doing deep work right now. So what is it that you're doing now that's going to advance this project?
So it's interesting, Ed. When I first started to put together let's call it a tangible, practical, technological proposition, what I'm doing to some degree, there's a technological aspect and there's a conceptual organizational aspect. And the organizational aspect sits on top of the technical, if you will. Okay.
Right.
When I speak of the organizational, I'm just speaking of the networks and structures that we spoke of. And to some degree, I've had to develop the technology and the organizational structures, pretty much one step after the other. And each has evolved my understanding of what. So the technological, in many ways, it's not interesting. I mean, it's wonderful, and it makes the other possible. But the organizational structures are what matters, and the organizational structures are what people ultimately perceive and interact with. So I'm currently on iteration 3 of the technology. Now, pretty sure I understand the organizational structures that I need to support, and they're extremely wide-ranging. They're across everything from UN or UN adjacent type bodies to local authorities, to schools, to universities, to companies, as we spoke, to local organizations, and then down to individuals and teams within companies, and how you interplay all of these, and how you create that without grinding yourself to a halt because you've bitten off too much. And the answer, by the way, is very simple. It just comes back to creating Lego pieces that are adequately flexible, that you can combine them in different ways without driving yourself nuts. So in terms of the current 10-day deep dive, it's really assembling some of those Lego pieces, and I've been working on the Lego pieces. The individual Lego pieces are easier to work on. You can pick them up and do a couple of days work and get something done. But it's time to slot a lot of these things together. And that is the outcome of a few different organizations and groups waiting for the assembled kit, as it were. So we're just starting to release this during the month of November, and it will be in. I mean, it's beyond the prototype. It'll be working and usable, and it'll be what it's going to be, but it will continue to evolve without question, effectively forever. But
what size companies do you see this initially working in?
It's funny. I mean, we're working with minnows, and we're working with, you know, the largest organization we're speaking to at the moment. And I'm not at liberty to share their name. But it's not a company; it's a public organization. It's 5.5 million members. So it's from that down to 1 or 2 man bands, if you know what I mean, and even individual consultants and so on. One of the we believe we are most useful in connecting locally on the one hand, and then connecting locally to higher tiers. I mean, just to use the old language in a way, you know, local authority or county and state and national and global tiers, because there's a real disconnect. There's a real problem in society connecting the theory, the research, the policy experts to on-the-ground activation and to active research, where people are saying, okay, well, that theory works in theory, but that theory doesn't work in practice. Here's what works in practice, and feeding that back up. And that's the kind of connectivity that that we're really passionate about bringing to bear. And that means you end up needing effectively everything, every kind of structure there is in society. You need the locals. You need the networks that connect the locals. You need the international bodies that are already networked at an international level, but they're struggling to get traction at the ground just because there isn't a good infrastructure to do so. So that's what we're putting together. It will never be optimal, because the day is optimal, and you wake up the following day is no longer. The game has moved on. So it's always an evolving, soup, if you will, but that's fine. You know, that's the nature of it, and let's get in there. And one of the lovely things about it, from my point of view, Ed, is, in fact, a couple of things. Then I'll start with your good self. The first lovely thing about it is the caliber of people I meet through it is humbling, and together equally humbling. And with those people, the goodness of people, the degree to which people want to contribute, and the degree to which it is empowering for people to say, yeah, this can make a difference. Wow, let's get stuck in, you know? And there are people, you know, I am but the spark, is probably what I'm trying to say, you know. The best of what we're doing is not coming from me. The best of what we're doing is coming from people who are leaning in and saying, oh, I see that. I know this space. I know the people around this space. They need to be connected, and it's everywhere. It's literally it is a global systemic issue that we don't have a for-purpose platform that connects people so they can do stuff together in a very effective way. I mean, we've got niche versions of that. I mean, maybe the academic system, publishing system, for example, and even that has its flaws. But you know, the platforms of the world, with the probable notable exception of LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn does a very good job of what it sets out to do. But most platforms that you use, they're not there to serve you. They're not there to serve me.
That's true.
Far from it. And you know, it's let me give credit where it is due. There's a really important one which I think needs to be mentioned, which is Wikipedia. You know, it delivers immense human value, and I mention that because if you think Wikipedia has done two things. Wikipedia does Wikipedia, but Wikipedia also shows us what can be done when the right thing is facilitated by technology, people are great. People want to contribute. People want to make a difference. And that's the I guess the foundation on which everything I'm doing here is built on.
So what's the spark or the motivation or that thing in people that makes them want to contribute? And I'm looking at that from where we've been for, say, 40 or 50 years, where that was not really the case. You know, they just did their job and they would go do what they wanted to do. So now there's this shift taking place. There's a shift taking place where people want to create change, and they want to participate, and they want to contribute, and they want to do. They don't want what they have experienced up to this point. They want something different. So what is it that kind of started this shift going?
I believe the answer is empowerment. I believe, and it's interesting as I consider my answer. I'm thinking about young people as well, because I think I'm 53, and I think people like yourself and myself and you know, maybe people of our general age. Actually, I'm going to stop generalizing. I'm just going to speak about myself, because it's not accurate to generalize. For myself, in any case, I do not like being infantilized. I do not like being manipulated. I don't like being oversold to. I don't like being, fed mistruths that are blatantly obvious to me. And I don't like seeing it being done to other people either, which is, by the way, what I see all of the time, And I think, and this is totally not like validated by me in any way, but I see it quite a lot in the people I meet, that people don't, people just are tired of the system being engineered to I'm not sure if you're familiar with the expression, the mushroom treatment, keep them in the dark and feed them rich stuff. And it's
that's a good analogy.
People come to, and people come to resent it. And the reason I mentioned youth a moment ago is, and I love it. I think youth of today have actually come up resenting it and come up and said, "Whoa, folks, we know that this is not the way it is."
Right.
And that's brilliant, because certainly when I was younger, I drank the Kool-Aid. I really thought that the system was the system, and that it was fundamentally valid and true. And I'm no conspiracy theorist, or I don't reject the system as a whole or anything like that. I'm a great believer that the world is round and gravity is real, and I'm quite happy to go along with anything that can be shown to be valid. But I'm not happy to just go along with stuff that is fed to us for other people's benefit. So for me, certainly the goal is empowerment, and the goal is empowerment of me, and the goal is empowerment of everybody that wants to be empowered, that wants to say, okay, here is a way of bypassing the manipulation. Here is a way of just getting into a better communication and better collaboration with people who are signed up to do the same thing. And it's funny, I mean, we will, Kune, the organization, we really see ourselves as having two missions. One is to create the technological infrastructure that supports the network of keys, and the other is to maintain a culture of truth-based and accurate and respectful and psychologically safe communication. And the rest is up to everybody. We're not coming with expertise on subject matters and domains. We don't have we don't have all of the answers. We're trying to create a space where the questions and answers can be discussed. And that involves the subdivision into communities and creating the multiple spaces on the one hand, and equally and probably more important, the culture of accountability, the culture of accuracy, and the culture of just space and respect and nurturing. We're all learning, and everybody you meet is on a learning journey of their own. They may be ahead of you on some things and behind on others, and that's all cool.
The interesting thing for me has to do with the people that I'm increasingly being introduced to and having meaningful conversations with. And these are not people who are corporate people, and they're not even people who have advanced degrees. They've not even had any higher education. They were, in some cases, are lucky to have graduated from high school. And what I'm finding is that their sense of the world. So they're not living in an abstract world. They're living in a very real, concrete world, and they see this going on, and they'll watch this or listen to this conversation we'll have, and they'll just be shaking their head, yeah, and it's and what I'm seeing is that they're going to be the ones who kind of save this world that we're in, because they've been working hard just to maintain the businesses, and there may be a janitor, but that janitor is making that building that they work in work for all those other people that are there. It is kind of interesting. And I had a conversation with a waitress last night at a bar, and she says, I was telling her who I am and what I do and what I was, talking about my podcast and stuff like that. And she says, well, I never went to college, but I'm reading all that stuff now. And,
wow.
And she was banging. She was telling me stuff. I said, that's really cool stuff. And it's because she wanted to know and she wanted to learn. And so I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. I'm more optimistic now than I've been in a long time, because I see this kind of stuff happening, and the technology is going to catch up with it. And you're one of the guys you and your team are going to be one of the ones that make that happen.
Yeah, and I must say I am hopeful too, and for the same reason. I mean, that there's a real appetite for it out there. And I love the way you phrase that. It will be one of the people making it happen, because we're wonderfully relaxed about the whole thing. If somebody rocks up with a 10 times better solution, we'll be like, oh,
just go with it.
We're with you. I mean, it's because the funny thing is, in the world we're living in, everything is speeding up so much anyway. There isn't, it's like on to the next game as fast as you can, so to speak. I mean, you've got to be moving. You can't be the time for building a static monolith is gone. So it's a very hopeful time. So, and one of the let me share one framing which speaks to that hope, if I may, Ed, as follows. It would be easy draw the conclusion that the world is, degenerating, or society is degenerating. And I mean, and there are bad things happening. Don't get me wrong. And I mean, there are bad things happening that we're making happen. It's not an accident,
That's right. That's right.
So I mean, I don't mean this naively, but those bad things are happening while we have been living as a society and operating as a society in a disempowered way, without the Eds and the Bryans and the Seans and the Davids of the world collaborating, able to collaborate, because we have let ourselves be I guess separated. or maybe we didn't have the facility in the first place to be together. And I believe that the time is coming when we will not be separated in that way. And that's just, you can't take the results from one scenario and say, well, that's just the way it's going to be, when there is a new scenario, a new reality can be built. So to me, it's entirely hopeful. By no means a given, by no means a sure thing, but it's all to play for. There's a new things are possible, and let's go make them happen.
Yeah, I agree with you, and the way the terminology that I use is that there are two global forces, and there's a global force of centralized institutions of governance and finance, and there's a global force of decentralized networks of relationships, and the centralized force has peaked and it's in decline, even though it's hard to see that, but it is, and the decentralized force is on the ascendancy, and
absolutely,
and the reason why I say it's in decline is that they have to create war in order to sustain their power. And if they stopped creating war, we would see that the rest of the world is doing what it needs to do to ensure a brighter future.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with all of that. Are you familiar with a guy, Nate Higgins? He runs a podcast called The Great Simplification, and you reminded me of him a moment ago when you spoke of the janitor and the waitress and so on. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not so much I don't consider myself an expert in most topics. I just flat out am not an expert on most topics. There's no false humility going on here. It's just a statement of fact.
Nate Higgins. I don't know him.
Nate,
you know him?
Nate. Oh, I mean, I don't personally know him. I mean, certainly he most definitely does not know me.
He should.
I'm sure, and I hope that some fine day he will, because he's probably got the most integrated view of what's going on of people I'm familiar with. And he runs a podcast called The Great Simplification. He speaks in particular on the significance of the future decline in oil and the future decline in energy as a result of that, and of the inadequacy of not even the inadequacy of renewable technologies, but it's the fact that the economy is not geared the economy is geared for growth. Everything is predicated on growth. Quite apart from the fact that our ecology and biodiversity and climate cannot sustain that. Well, guess what? Neither can our energy reserves. Okay, so we're going to hit the top of the hill. We're pretty close to it by his reckoning and many of the experts he brings on, and we will start trundling down the far side in due course. Which in many ways is actually great news. It'll just be painful news, but it may be less painful than the medicine we're currently cooking for ourselves anyway. But I mention all of that because he speaks of how he portrays what he is trying to do, looking at this future where things become somewhat less plentiful and economies go into some decline and things become more contentious as a result, all of which is happening in parallel with climate getting worse, etc. And he speaks of the need for islands. He speaks of them practically as of just neighborhoods and communities as stepping stones or as boulders in a stream. So when the flood comes, there is some coherence and there's some ability and there's some, I guess, leadership, practical leadership, that there are people who know how a community can run without it being part of a six-continent supply chain. And that speaks to exactly what you said about the janitors and the nurses and the real people, if you will. The people who, and the other thing that you reminded me of when you spoke of those, and I'm not sure how this played out in the US, Ed, certainly in Ireland and the UK, during COVID, the frontline workers, the people who keep society going, the nurses, the doctors, the shopkeepers, the bin collection, the garbage collection people. I mean, they were lauded, rightfully lauded as heroes because they actually did keep society going. Okay, of course, when COVID, you know, diminished as a clear and present danger, then guess what? Their status in society, they got, you know, relegated back down the pile to insignificance, and just worthy of mention now and then.
Right.
It's remarkable because it's exactly what you spoke of. It's what's real and what's essential. Yeah, what's essential isn't necessarily treated with the respect it gets. Sorry, with the respect it deserves.
Yeah, I have the sense that well, it's one of my little frameworks, you know, that we're living in the world of the spectacle of the real, I call it, and what the people at the top of the performance hierarchy are doing is creating a simulation of reality. It's not reality, and you know, I remember it must have been 2 years ago now. There's a German economist who teaches in the UK. He spent about 12 or 15 years in Japan during their crisis in the 90s, and his name is Richard Werner. And I saw him on a panel, and he said that he was talking about, I think, the reserve banks, and says they don't create wealth. What creates wealth is each individual mortgage holder paying the interest on their mortgage. That's where the new wealth comes from. And I thought that was so practical and so reality based that it was just it made everything else seem very nonsensical.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah, I have there are a couple of so I am, when I speak of not being an expert, there are some things I am a non-expert in even more so than others, and certainly when it comes to economics, I'm a grade A qualified non-expert. Okay, I'm
right.
You know, I mean, give me a, yeah, I can do stuff. I can count on my fingers and stuff, but not the full blown economics. But I think part of that's actually, from what I can figure out, that's a good thing. Okay, because I think some classical economics seems so predicated on really bad assumptions that not being able to fully follow them is probably a sign of intelligence, not a sign of stupidity. But there are a couple of, actually, that guy again, Nate Hagen, speaks really eloquently and very informedly on I guess on real economics, just like you said, where you know, and the correlation between energy and materials, that you know, sure, you can keep on creating money, but at some, you know, some fine day the piper will want to be paid. And that isn't a problem when you can keep on digging up more stuff and creating more stuff to keep on, you know, keep the music going and so on. But at some fine day, you just end up, you run out of stuff, or you run out of the ability to run faster. And when you can no longer run faster, guess what? Somebody's in trouble.
The bill,
you know?
comes due.
The bill comes due. There's a thing, modern monetary theory. I've never dug into it. A little bit because I wouldn't be qualified to anyway, and a lot because it just doesn't pass the sniff test for me. It's just, and I should, please, if anybody's watching this, please don't let this turn you off of modern monetary theory, because I have not dug, and even if I had dug, I'm not qualified to dig. But it just seems to say you can keep on printing money and do stuff with it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It just doesn't.
Because it's not real money.
That's probably a mangling of the principle entirely. So it's inappropriate probably of me to throw such loose comment out.
Well, this has been really great to meet you and to hear about what you're doing. And if people want to get to know you and learn more about what you're doing and participate in the things that you're doing, whatever that may be, broader than maybe even the IT stuff, how do they find you? What's your
Well, I'm going to ask you, when are you likely to share this information? Because if it's in more than a few weeks' time, I will tell you where you can
I
where
will
it can be found.
give me 1 second. Let me find my schedule. Here we are. This will be I have you scheduled for November 27th.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well then, dear people, please come and meet me on Kune.co, Kune.co.
Okay.
That's probably the simplest. If you click in there, we will have something there that says, please find
So
click here.
you have something unfolding that
there is something unfolding. There is something unfolding on that. You could actually go there already today, but it's just a little bit outdated and misleading. It'll be hopefully a little bit less misleading by then. And maybe more directly, if anybody wants to reach out to me personally, Sean O'Sullivan, literally LinkedIn, Sean O'Sullivan. So LinkedIn/in/Sean O'Sullivan, SEAN O'Sullivan.
Okay.
Always pleased. If you're a friend of Ed's, you're a friend of mine. I'll be delighted to connect.
Well, I mean, you're treading on troubled waters. No, I'm joking. I appreciate that very much. You're very kind, and that's what I hope actually builds a network of people who are part of this Eddie network, who they may talk once a year, but they feel that they're part of something. And I mean, what I'm doing, I'm just having conversation, but it feels like it's going somewhere that I can't pinpoint, and hopefully other people will be able to say, this is what's going on and this is what you need to do. And with this,
well, allow me, if you would, to give you some feedback. And yeah. I think I know why you can't quite fathom where it's going. It's because you are in your element, you're in your zone, and you are doing. I mean, what comes naturally is probably cheapens it a little, but what now comes naturally. Okay, it's instinctive and it's natural.
right?
So the fact that it's working is a little bit perplexing, because work should feel harder.
Well, there's a lot of work to it, but
of course, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
But I do feel like this is some of the best work I've ever done.
Well, you're the most natural of weavers. You've a really natural weaving skill, and you blend language, and you've just got this, and it's wonderful to sit on this side, Ed. You've made me talk excitedly about myself and everything I'm doing. I can't wait to see the podcast to see exactly who I am, because you've got the very best of me in flow, and that's a tribute to you.
Well, I'm just very curious about people, and I want to understand them, because then it helps me to understand what's going on in the world. And this is one reason why I feel optimistic about the future, is that all these people that I've met. I mean, this is, what number are you? This is the 85th interview I've done this year.
Wow. This year?
Yeah, I'll do 2 a week.
Wow. That's cranking them out. Well done, you. And
I'm doing all the post-production work too, because I want to understand that too. So that's where it's got to change next year. I need some help, but what kind of help do I need? Where does this need to go?
Funnily, Ed, and let me speak to my personal conviction. I believe there are so many great people out there who would love to help once they see that there is something of value to help with. So let me put that in the back of my little mind. Not that I will necessarily be the one to solve it, but it's totally. You're getting your hope and your energy from the people you're speaking with. So am I. And we're both getting our hope from seeing people who really want change and who are prepared to lean into it once there's considered and genuine and sincere and informed effort going into it. And that's the game we're in. And there are people out there who are video editing wizards, who might interview the one do.
What I realize is that I'm following the linear pattern of my model, which is the circle of impact. And I've begun with a set of values, and my core values have to do with honor and treating people with dignity and honor and respect and building trust. Those are my core values. And then it builds relationships through the vehicle of Zoom interviews. And then the thing that follows from that is, what does the structure of something like that look like? And at this point, I can't imagine what that looks like. I don't want to go out chasing dollars. I don't want to go out chasing, fans. I don't want to do that, because that is counter to what I believe, which is building relationships with people that I really am interested in knowing. And, you and I would, 6 weeks from now, if you sent me a note, say, can we talk today? I say, of course we can. I mean, I'm going to be available to all these people that I've met, and they are probably going to be available to me for the same reason. We're building something which doesn't have the traditional structure. It has a social structure to it, where we contribute to each other's lives and contribute to each other's development and work. And the question is, how does that unfold over time? And that's the big question that's kind of at the front of my mind as of right now, this month.
Well, another value that you haven't explicitly mentioned, but that leaps out of you, is generosity. Because you're sitting there and you're giving to the world, and you're giving to people, and you're not even explicitly asking how's it all going to work out. You're just giving and in trust that it will work out.
That's right.
And it's a beautiful thing to see, and it's also a great strategy because you get the right people around you, and people. I think people very few people, in my experience, want to be takers. They want to give as much as they take. They want to be fair players and so on.
But at the same time, they don't want to be exploited and taken advantage of and not appreciated.
Correct.
That's the other side of that.
That is didn't go back to the full spectrum of values that you mentioned, of honor and so on. That's kind of the lovely thing about being alive today as against 30 years ago. You could have had that in a geographically confined, where you within the reach one would have. Now it's a much more open. You can look at us, thousands of miles away, and able to connect and have a fantastic conversation. Of very like-minded spirits, I believe. And who knew this was possible? Funny, may I say, don't know if I mentioned this to you, that tomorrow would be my dad's 100th birthday. Were he alive? He passed 7-8 years ago. But it's a lovely moment. And the reason I thought of him just now is, I don't think I could explain this to him. Just even the Zoom call, let alone the deeper conversation, the other conversation.
But if he was on the call with us, he would come to understand.
Oh, and the values and the importance of relationships. I mean, he lived his life in this valley, and it was right back to the real thing, right back to the janitor and the.
Yeah, I would love to have interviewed him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, he would have loved it too. Trust me, Ed. Yeah, he was not shy to share his thoughts. He was a wonderful spreader of wisdom.
Well, I think we'll end up doing this again, and in the new year. And
I would truly love that, Ed. And if I may, when you mentioned earlier about reaching out in 6 weeks' time, I'm not sure of the time frame, but I'm certainly going to be picking your brains. I'd love to get your. I'd love to hear more. Maybe is
anytime, and I want to learn more about the work that you're doing, because we need well, let me kind of finish to say that this piece about the circle of impact. What I discovered early on when I started as a consultant in the mid-90s was that the obstacle to growth and the obstacle to development, the obstacle to everything that was happening, was the lack of understanding of how the structure of an organization affected people. They just took it for granted that that was the given, and then they kind of worked around the edges of it, and they, all these consultants and coaches that work within these corporate structures are trying to fix things without actually addressing the structure problem that exists.
1000%.
And when I started talking about this 20 years ago, people didn't understand that, because they were like fish in water. Fish don't know what water is. It's just the environment they live in. So, and we're now beginning, I think what COVID did was it pointed to how these structures actually function to deny people their agency as persons, their dignity, their ability to contribute and be persons that feel like I have made a difference that matters in my family or my community or at my work. That to me is what drives me, and because I want to see these communities functioning well because the people are contributing. And so I'll just kind of give you one more piece of this. So I don't see leadership as a role or a title. I see leadership as a person taking personal initiative to create impact that makes a difference, that matters. And my goal in this is to see 1% of the world's population taking personal initiative to create impact. So whatever that is, 800 million people or something like that. I don't know what the number is. I'm not a math person. But if you had that many people doing what you were talking about, which was contributing, we would see a different world.
Exactly.
It would emerge overnight.
Yeah. So, I mean, your philosophy, your thinking, you know what? Exactly as you said, including the definition of leadership, and including that leadership happens everywhere, and it ain't at the top of the pyramid necessarily. And it can be, but it can be from the janitor. And it's, and the people who make that difference, just like I spoke of you doing what you're doing, they don't necessarily feel like they're making the difference. I mean, you gotta even the receptionist in a company with the people you meet represents so much of your impression of a company. Just even from that, just their attitude, just their energy, just that a little bit,
Right.
And that can't be compelled. That can't be forced. That's got to come, So it's fascinating. That's a whole podcast session on its own. That whole conversation.
It really is, and my word to people is look for those people where you work who are making that difference, and thank them for that.
Yeah, I love it. You're
and then
right.
then do what they're doing and replicate it.
Exactly.
So,
I love it.
Well, Sean, thank you very much for being on. This is already made this week a very special week, and I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I look forward to following what you're doing, because I want to see new structures forming through what you're doing that's really going to elevate the ability of people to take personal initiative to create impact. So, I mean, that's what I see in what you're doing, and it's really necessary, and it's really important, and whatever I can do to help champion that and cheer that on, you
Well,
you can use me for that purpose.
Well, thank you for all parts of this, including that very generous offer right there, Ed. I've loved the whole call. I've got great energy from it. And the one thing I can tell you, I mentioned at the start that I'm here for a kind of a deep dive of just getting techie stuff done for 8 or 10 days. I don't think I could have kicked it off with a better framing than this call, because I just want to dive in here and get this stuff done right now, and you've given me a huge boost of just good energy to carry into that, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm very honored by that. Well, thank you, Sean, and thank you everyone for watching the Eddie Network podcast. I think there's something here for you. If you're listening, listen or watch this again, because there's a lot that's here that's worth reflecting on and worth maybe taking some notes on, and worth saying, maybe there's something for me to do that I've been holding off doing. So that's one of the opportunities that come with watching two people talk with each other about the things that are important to them. So this is a great show. Thank you very much. Wish you well on your deep dive into the work that you got to do. And everybody, we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you, everybody.